We are going to start with, I think, the biggest talking points with people have proven to be the moves that are made by the bands who have most recently graduated in status to being one of the few actual big bands of, more recent generations. And those are the bands that seem to have the real magnifying glass taken to them. And rarely is that more true than with Parkway Drive and their new album Darker Still, which came out this September, of course. I got into Parkway Drive on Deep Blue. A lot of you will be Horizons or even Killing with a Smile. But we don't get a lot of our bands actually get big. And the recalibration in my mind of Parkway Drive from the band that I liked on Deep Blue to one of the biggest, most hot button bands in our world because of the things that they are on the cusp of as a band, I think has been an exciting one.
I mean, I have loved Parkway Drive sort of trajectory. I'm with you on that. I got into them just before Deep Blue, it was around that time, but they have been on a really interesting trajectory, making what I feel are interesting creative moves as they've got bigger and how they have morphed their sound, which I still think is distinctly them, into arena metal. It's never felt like a weird kind of pivot away from who they are.
Hasn't been so for everyone, and the build into Darker Still seems to have been about as rocky as it's ever been for Parkway Drive. And one of the things with when bands do things like this is what normally happens is the first time people, the people who aren't going to go with it, they leave. And then people kind of accept it and move on with their lives after that kind of initial change upsets them or whatever. Why has the grumbling gotten worse with Parkway Drive the further they've gotten into this trajectory?
I'm genuinely baffled by how people keep coming back if they're you know what? If you didn't like Aya and you came back to at least give reverence, I kind of would have got that. But if you didn't like reverence as well, why are you still coming back for the third time and complaining about the direction they've gone in? It's such a weird one.
Yeah, I think Aya is probably my favourite record of theirs, top to bottom. I think most people really liked Aya. There was that kind of initial confusion with Vice Grip, but I know most of you guys, really went with it. Reverence is maybe where people start to take umbrage a little bit more with the direction that was being taken.
I mean, Aya upset a certain portion of the fan base who just want metalcore breakdowns and don't like the more heavy metal stuff. Those people kind of complain about Aya. But Reverence kind of, splintered that a little bit further.
Yeah, for me, I felt that Parkway have kind of grown with me and where I was headed more so than the vast majority of the bands that they were once surrounded by. Because of that, crop of metalcore bands, I fell in love with a lot of those bands kind of circa, 2010. They came same kind of time as Parkway Drive. The evolution of Parkway Drive, as opposed to where Bring Me went, where While She Sleeps went, where Architects and Bury Tomorrow have now gone in recent years, they were the one that have kind of planted themselves further into my heart the more time went along because of the music they were making. If you are someone who, that kind of music in that point in time is what you care most about, it's well documented that you probably don't share that. For a fan of heavy metal, first of all, we are going to get to some bands later in this show who write melodically brilliant, massive, heavy metal music. But it doesn't really get anywhere. And bands like Amon Amarth, who are similar to Parkway Drive in the way that they've kind of grinded their way up slowly over time, but they still have this more kind of extreme metal foundation to them with the death growled vocal and everything. They haven't been able to get as far up the pillar as Parkway Drive have done. It was thrilling for me to see a band writing proper anthemic heavy metal tunes and actually get to the place where that kind of music is meant to be played, which is at the top of Wacken Festival, and having a documentary made about that kind of achievement as a classic but contemporary thing.
Yeah, no, totally. I think Parkway Drive you're right with the sort of the heavy metal thing of they are the modern band who have just done heavy metal on the sort of the biggest way without it kind of going into the sort of the power metal thing or anything.
It's not an atavistic way. They've not gone to just okay, we are throwing everything out and now we sound exactly like Saxon. That's not true. It's just the spirit of that sort of hugeness and melody and showmanship.
That's what I'm saying when I said that they have made interesting creative moves in terms of you're right, Ryan Heavy Metal, but they have still kept the core identity of Parkway Drive. I think that you can still trace a through line from, at the very least, Deep Blue to where they are now. It's been an evolution on that sound, and kind of like, yeah, splitting off into a more heavy metal leaning direction, but it doesn't feel like you can't hear the band that wrote Deep Blue there.
Darker Still, surprised to get it so soon, in the way that we earlier this year, just a few months ago, had a announcement from Parkway Drive that they were going to be they had to cancel a US tour that they had coming up due to kind of, and the statement they put out made it seem like there was some serious kind of internal issues going on in the band, to the point where some people read that statement and were like, oh my god, are Parkway Drive breaking up? And they very firmly said, no, we're not breaking up, we just need to take some time. Very, very quickly turn around, we got the release of Darker Still, and they're, you know, presumably going to go out on the road at some point and support all of this. A lot of
on the road right now, like.
Yeah, there you go. A lot of the, you know, the talk from the band around this has been about kind of almost like, you know, the band therapy that they sort of went through during the making of this in order to be able to you know, go there. And you feel that the struggle of making this record, reassessing as a band what they're kind of doing, it has gotten mostly very positive reviews if you go and read what, you know, big publications are saying about it. In terms of reaction amongst you guys, which is what I track mainly, it hasn't hit in a big way, more a respectable, you know, yep, that's kind of what they do way.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Like, again, like, I'm not too surprised that it reviewed well. I think it's they're in the privileged position of being a big band who are like, the hopes are pinned on them, and they're still writing good music. But the reaction has definitely felt a little more muted. I do think, like I said, with the whole like they need to take time off. I wonder if it was just the, like, say, the process of getting the album done, and they were just like, we can't go out on this tour. We might actually like fall apart whilst we're on the road. So cancel the tour, just take a couple of weeks, a month, like, to just recalibrate. But yeah, it's been a weird, like, little journey in the sort of the months preceding to this album.
Yeah, so when we look into, I guess, the product that we've got, Darker Still, what are you making of it, I guess, in comparison to, you know, kind of what we've come to associate with Parkway Drive so far?
I mean, I think that I love this record. Like, I'm so in awe of Parkway Drive.
Do you really love it?
I would take this over Reverence, absolutely. Like,
ooh, okay.
It's one that, because obviously we had it a couple of weeks before the release, and now it's a couple of weeks since the release. I've had it on pretty consistently in that time, and I have just really just let it sink into me, and I'm having, like, I just have such a good time when I put this record on. Right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is the obvious side of it is, I think that you hear a band who, for all of the kind of turmoil that's been suggested around its creation, you hear an extreme confidence and capability in the core fundamentals of what they do now, right? Like, the core kind of Parkway Drive banger, if you will, is present and correct, and you feel that they are so, you know, to grips with that. Glitch was the first one that we got from it. I love that, like, driving forward against, like, adversity kind of feeling, rowing, if you will, if you are of a certain, you know, European band's persuasion. Just that kind of huge stomp to it. I think Winston's vocal cadence there, with I feel a glitch in the cortex, whatever it is, like, might be a little goofy for people. You don't have that. You don't have to pitch shift that too much, and it starts to sound a bit like Fred Durst. But if you like a kind of catchy, confident rhythm that is good and immediate for, like, a big, boisterous metal banger like that, it's there. And you can complain all you like about those bits. The Help Me Take This Pain Away, sleep is now my enemy, is going to sound enormous live. They have this ability with those choruses to incite this full sing with your gut thing that gets massive crowds going. There is no doubt in my mind here that the singles here, those big rallying kind of calling card songs, are going to do just fine with everything else that they've done up to this point.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I liked Glitch when it dropped. The vocal thing, like, it's not a million miles from what he was doing on Crushed, on Higher. That's why I never quite, again, got the beef there. I was like, they've gone new metal, oh, it's rap, it's fun. I'm like, I feel like Glitch, and this is not too far from the welcome to the new world. Like, that whole...
Yeah, like, I think he is one of those people who, I guess... I have a lot more to say about this later.
Yeah, fair enough.
He has a original vocal style, and he is kind of inventing what he is doing on the fly, and sometimes it might almost accidentally sound a bit like something that maybe is close to rapping or whatever, but I don't think that's where he's taking the influence. I think he is stretching his own kind of cadences.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it as well. But yeah, no, I do agree. I think there are, and not just Glitch, like you've got The Great Sphere, you've got like Napalm, Ground Zero, like the base, the opening on this record, you could stick all of those in the set list. They've all got a rousing kind of just full throat, belt it out chorus, the whole the fight, the fall, the scars and broken bones. They like that's all over this record. Like honestly, in terms of chorus hooks, this could be, I think, they're like. Don't think it's their best. It's up there. I think it's got some of their best sort of hooks on there. It's insanely catchy. It is made for festival stages, arenas, like, and it's still heavy. It's like crushingly like thick and full sounding. So like when it comes to, like I said, those lead singles that you are gonna put in the live set, I think this album you just like smashed it out of the park on that front.
Yeah, that one that you were just singing, that's from Ground Zero, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the opener. Yeah.
He's very much like that. Was just in my head, just before going to record this. That track is the opener. It starts with this kind of very, very soft, kind of fragile Winston vocal, where he
does that chorus, but like kind of half whispered.
And they're trying to do this thing of like going from like the softest place they've ever been to kind of erupting really contrastingly. That part, it's like 20 seconds or something, and then the lead that you get coming out of it is huge. And I love the Jeff's kind of like patented Parkway Drive lead sound they have now. In the same way that Amon Amarth have their like recognizable lead sound. Michael Amott from Arch Enemy has his. Parkway have theirs, and it might be the most kind of triumphant fucking stars in your eyes, dazzling sound of all of those. It's absolutely just like. Fucking, it's like a rainbow going overhead, and how fucking triumphant it is. And then you have Winston go drop the beat into the brick, which is it's a laugh, isn't it? All right,
like that. Like there are a couple of bits in this album like that, which I'm like, I can understand something that's a bit goofy, but I'm like, yeah, but also it's fun. Like I don't care.
It's a laugh for sure. And there's a massive sense of scale to their songs when they do those things that I love. Like you feel that these songs shouldn't be played anywhere but an enormous space with, bright lights, even more fire. Land of the Lost near the end is so fucking epic sounding. That's my, like, I can't believe it wasn't a single track from this record, because there is so much drama in that riff. And when you couple that with the kind of gritted teeth, like, deep-voiced fucking roar of keep digging is so just, like, momentous. And again, like, genuinely kind of epic sounding.
I think like when you want like the epic sound, you're like, that's a great shout. Like just go back to Ground Zero. It's when they do the last chorus and you've just got the drums going and it's full on like
that is great.
And like arena rock cheese,
arena filling.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is huge sounding. Like whether you like or not, like this is undeniably like what I want my big heavy metal to sound like is that. And I think like they nail that on so many moments across this record.
For me, they're one of the bands who most effectively sell the kind of group melodic vocal effect, which like more and more bands who have kind of graduated from like all harsh vocals to incorporating melody, a lot of them are adopting that sound rather than having like a out and out very accomplished clean singer. And sometimes to me it sounds really samey as a result. But Parkway's like from Prey through to the fights, the falls, the scars and broken bones, it's such a brilliantly rallying part of their sound. The one that really stood out to me in that regard as something a little bit new, in a way that I really liked, is The Greatest Fear, which has this the verse riff with that pure like 4/4 sad but true crunch is awesome, but the vocal hook, the group dynamic on it takes on more of this like sort of deep male voice choir thing that is more akin to anything they've done so far, to a kind of folk sound that you would get from like European metal bands. And they're like the way that they are singing about a character, the master of Dominion, he's the shadow on the wall, like it's a god or a deity or something. It does sound much better than the way I just did it. It's sort of impersonating, but it's like Parkway's answer to this kind of like huge like mythological European kind of metal anthems. I'm very inclined to like that sound. It's a development I like even more, I guess, on that particular moment, and it is big emotions being spoken about and reflected in the sound in this kind of like mythological way. The way that Parkway are getting like grander and grander about these things does work for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, like that sound, I'm not as open to it to you, but when it does hit with me, it's something I will properly love. And again, I think like this is well Euro metal. Like, there's no denying that. Like that's kind of where Parkway are at the most. Probably it's where they can go and headline Vakken and stuff like that. So of course they're gonna channel even more of that as they go. But again, it's delivered with such conviction, and you're at that deep booming kind of group vocal of the Master of Dominion, and then when it goes the Harbinger of all dark matters, dun, 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 that stomp on the riff, like it just, again, it sounds so imposing, so grand. And you're right, when it does that kind of like fantastical, kind of like epic Euro metal thing, they just do it in a way that sounds authentic and genuinely like understanding how that stuff should sound.
The weirdest bit about Parkway is that they haven't just made a pivot into, you know, sounding like Bon Jovi or whatever the fucking idiots in the comment section say to get the biggest reactions, but, you know, into sounding like, you know, that kind of European metal or whatever. They've not just started doing, they've started writing big anthemic heavy metal choruses. That would be a very easy shift for us to make sense of, I think. And I think a lot of us would probably have no qualms with just, you know, loving that. The weirdest bit about Parkway that maybe puts the spanner in the works for people who struggle to connect wholly is that they hold back from actually being completely, like, crowd-pleasing by, at the same time, insisting on making these kind of darker, moodier records at the same time. And again, the story of this record has very much been it's based around the kind of the concept of the dark night of the soul. It's a kind of cathartic journey structure of a record. And I think Reverence, the reason why that didn't click with people as a whole body of work the way that Aya did is because it wasn't as crowd pleasing in that element. It had those kind of weird detours more so, and that's what made it a record that took more time to actually get into for as instantaneous as the singles were. You know, outside of seeing it live and just going, wow, like it's proving a sticking point once again here. I think I admire the gall of just going, nah, fuck you, we're going to keep trying to play this like weird hybrid that we're doing, and we're not just going to be like the most basic form of what we could be. Who the fuck tries to take influence from Euro metal and Tom Waits simultaneously? But doing those things at the same time is no other band on the planet, as far as I'm aware, is doing that. It to the fucking incredible extent that Parkway Drive are, and I think it's the meshing of those things that is leaving some people going like, do one or the other, lads. Like, this doesn't make sense. Not only do I admire the ghoul of it, but I think it is proving. I won't say it's entirely cohesive yet, but I do think it is producing some really interesting moments that make the records more valuable than if it was just, here's an album of fucking power metal tunes.
It's one of my favourite things about this album, honestly. Like,
okay, so for you it's like 100% there.
Like, I'm not saying I think Home Sync works all the time, but the fact it is crucial to the DNA of this record that they are trying to do these, like I say, epic, big heavy metal tunes mixed with kind of like singer-songwriter, kind of dark folky, Nick Cave, Tom Waits, like Mark Lanigan, that kind of sort of like vein of things. Like, trying to mix that in with the heavy metal, no one else is doing it. And it is one of those like really interesting, and this is why I get really sort of get being my bonnet about people complaining about them sounding like Five Finger Death Punch, because I'm like, your like pool of bands that you're comparing them to is so narrow if you can't pick out that there are these other influences where they're trying to write these like, or like say like these dark folk songs in the midst of like epic heavy metal tunes. Like, obviously the title track is the big one of that on this record, isn't it? Because it's the 7-minute centerpiece on the album.
It's the big one. I don't think it's the weirdest.
If a God Can Bleed's the weirdest one.
Because If a God Can Bleed is definitely. I think I like it, and it has that kind of. I think the thing that I can appreciate if someone was to go, I don't like this, and the reason I can understand that is bringing that sort of Tom Waitsian thing into a big arena metal sound. You could argue that it makes it sound not kind of suffocatingly intimate in the same way. And when you get on If a God Can Bleed, when he does that, it's so exaggerated with the fat little piggy,
like
it's some kind of like
blow.
yeah, caricature thing. I think some people have compared it to King 810, which I think is a little bit lazy, but I can understand why you would hear that and go, in this context, it sounds more like that than it does the reference points that Winston is actually sort of trying to draw on. I think I just go with I like the weird slurring. I like the fat little piggy. It's on a kind of like on a looping beat that feels like it is like tipping the hat to kind of like Portishead and like trip hop and stuff. Like it's musically as a whole, it's a interesting Beatle.
I mean, the thing as well is like on the last 3 albums, like this, they've always done this song, the weird kind of like spoken wordy bit right before.
None of them sound the same. They all sound different.
But I like that it always almost comes like right before the big kind of mid-album absolute rager. Like it's always kind of like an extended into that, because you had it with Writing on the Wall into Bottom Feeder. You had I can't remember what the one is before The Void on Reverence. There's the kind of
is it shadow boxing?
No, so the shadow boxing has it.
Cemetery Bloom.
Cemetery Bloom. That's it. Cemetery Bloom into The Void, and then you've got If a God Can Bleed into Soul Bleach, which again like. The way that they just kind of do these, like, we're going to have this weird, moody, spoken word kind of, like, gothic interlude.
Yeah, there's another, like, weird little kind of 50-second kind of interlude type track as well, isn't there? But,
like, Stranger is the one,
If a God Can Bleed, I don't begrudge people maybe not gelling with it. I think it is a admirable experiment that, I think I like overall. As I always seem to be fucking reminding people with these type records, it's not that much of the runtime. Like, it's
2 minutes.
It's just a little bit that they do some of these weird things. The title track, I think, is maybe their most successful example to date of these kind of songs that have this more stripped-back realm to it. And it must have been so satisfying for them as songwriters, because it's all about just building something over a gradual period of time, nearly 7 minutes. The whistle that, the whole thing sort of spins out of has got a real, like, Ennio Morricone spaghetti western kind of feel to it. That, with the strings, it builds such a wonderful place of kind of sense of place and scale. The guitar leads have a real, like, Kirk Hammett circa the 90s kind of feel of, the soul in them in these moodier spaces. And the song did remind me of, when Metallica in the 90s spread their wings into writing songs like The Unforgiven or even Nothing Else Matters or whatever.
Yeah.
And having that, again, sort of epicness and vastness.
I was about to say the epic kind of like semi-acoustic metal ballad, like,
or all based around that. The night grows darker still, getting bigger and bigger every time it comes back around to it. That song might be my favorite song on the record. The gradual kind of escalation of it is
into that guitar solo, like
it's pretty much immaculate. Like everything about it is exactly how it should be. Like it's sumptuous. It's like getting like a luxury dessert or something from a restaurant. Being like, oh, wow, everything's exactly all of the ingredients, and that is just an excellent song, right? Like the craft there is inarguable. The core refrains that the song is built on, the whistle that ends up being picked up by the guitars at the end, the vocal melodies. There are very strong and dependable in those, and then around those elements, the execution of everything else coming in, it's very tasteful. Like there is nothing shit about that song.
No, totally.
And for me, like the last couple minutes of it, especially when all of that is there, and you get the absolute coming out of the other side of that, it's wonderfully classy, I think, and it's if they can pull it off live and have this real moment, like it's such a great song to add to their repertoire.
Yeah, I think, like I said, like the use of the strings there, like again, they had obviously a little bit of the strings on Reverence, and then kind of going, we're going to take that a step further. So like when you kind of get that guitar solo bursting through the darkness, and you get it like the guitars and the strings playing the same part against each other, just again, it sounds grand, but it sounds. That's when, there is nothing gaudy or tacky about it. It is so tastefully done in just wanting to make a emotional like journey of a song, and I think it is, like I said, like for a band who, when you go back to where their roots of "So Cry Me a Fucking River, Bitch" and stuff like that, like the growth into being able to write a song like that is like, I think you're right. For them as songwriters, must feel so cathartic and satisfying to be like, we can do this now at this stage in our career. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, to me, when they do the kind of the basic massive stirring melody thing, which is their like go-to trick now. They do still benefit from having that kind of 21st century crush. So stuff like, you know, Imperial Heretic with its Dragula kind of chorus. Doesn't make it less massive. I like the bit at the end when Winston goes "Fear, Fire, and Faith" in a more melodic voice, and it sounds like Michael from Volbeat who showed up in like the back of the mix, just shouting from the back. And then for the kind of straight Laria stuff as well, you know, the pre-chorus riff in Like Napalm beneath the goddamn is fucking pummeling. It's not Dying to Believe, but it's good. And then Soul Bleach, especially erupting out of, like you said, If a God Can Bleed. Come on, that's a bulldozer.
Yeah, like if you don't kill me, then fuck you better run. Like, just that song is just like pure, like I say, it is the bang your head, jumping down rager that like Parkway Drive, you know, they can still just drop, and it again sounds so hard, and Winston can still hit those like really guttural vocals that he doesn't really do much on this record. It's much more, he's like the cleaner end of his screaming, but on that song he pulls it out at the right moment. Again, it just is like he's got so many like little tricks he can pull as a vocalist now that is like makes him sound really accomplished.
Yeah, but it's real anger and conviction in that one as well. It's not like, you know, letting another one of those out because you need to make one. That's like proper heavy music, aggression and catharsis, as it should be. Do you feel that there is... Let's look at, I guess, some of the core single songs and so on. Do you feel like there's any repetition of tricks when it comes to... I think particularly the breakdowns and the kind of drop moments are things that people look at and being like, I've kind of heard these all before now. I
mean, like, yeah, I guess, because that to me feels like the one thing Parkway have kept to try and like appease the older fans who still want the breakdowns, because it's again what they one of the elements they traded on for so long, and like, yeah, they've kind of done it to death, but also when you get the "Let Me the Fuck Out" one in Glitch, stuff like that, they're just still really good at it, and they make those breakdowns still sound fun and engaging. It's not always the same, just kind of like like just the same kind of basic chugging pattern. That they'll make some of them that are a bit more like bouncy and fun, and others that are just like low end crushing. So like I'm fine with it. I can understand why people would say that is a repetitive element. It's been there all the time with Parkway. It's just one of the things they do, but it doesn't bother me particularly.
No, I like them again. The when they do the one in Glitch you mentioned, very sort of textbook example of, like, you know, building and executing that moment. I really like the nevermore in Greatest Fear when it like comes like a right hook after the kind of choir part. There are what you were saying about kind of like the picking patterns and stuff for them. I think some of them do kind of blur together. I'm not sure I could kind of sing you these breakdowns in the way I can. You know, they're not going to do a better one than Bottom Feeder at this stage, are they? Like even going back to Pressures and so on. It's the part of their sound that does feel like they've run out of invention with it. You know, how much more can you really do with that thing? And it's the part where they could be doing something really, you know, cool and interesting with a song, and then the drop moment comes because it's almost like, okay, there it is, you got to do it. I like the one in Greatest Fear again when the breakdown of the song gives way to like a much more slamming groove, the and then for kind of a few seconds. Really great, and I guess an example of where they can, you know, throw another little element in to kind of subvert that slightly. From the Heart of the Darkness is maybe a bit of a rudimentary closer. I like it, but if you're putting it next to a Deathless song, or like Kronos is like the last big metal song on Reverence, that's fucking fantastic. But and this feels a little bit more basic, but it does have that kind of Sabaton Sparta style. Whoo!
It's got the Fury Be My Victory thing, and that and again the final minute where they kind of just go really hard on the riff. I sort of agree with what you mean. It's a bit like this is the Parkway Drive closer nowadays. Like, but I think it's still very good.
Yeah, it's not a letdown in the tracks by any means. I want to go back to what you were saying about Winston vocally, because I think the thing across this that maybe people just go, oh no, is those kind of more, you know, charismatic, kind of ballsy elements that Winston has taken his voice. He's not just doing his stock metalcore scream anymore. Sometimes it's really dramatic on like If a God Can Bleed. Sometimes it's just, I feel a glitch in the cortex. Unconventional vocal styles are things that are like the biggest killer in getting bands over with people, you know? Like,
yeah.
And I think now particularly metal has become ingrained in this place where vocal styles that deviate from the set norm of what metal vocals are often get pushback. Like King Diamond, if he turned up right now, would not be allowed to get anywhere near as far as he did in the 1980s when people heard that and went, a lot of people went, I know, but a lot of people went, wow, this is really fucking striking. Nowadays he turns up, he doesn't get a fucking record deal. Like, what other band are getting as big with a more unconventional vocal style in, straight up just fucking ballsy metal than Parkway Drive right now?
No, I would totally agree. I think like he could do like the sort of the standard metalcore clean singing or whatever you want to, and just stick to the sort of screams. But he's letting his personality like just kind of come all out on it, and I think it's a much more interesting listen to me.
God, I am so fucking glad I cannot detect a pinch of Chester Bennington in what
no totally
does.
I think it's one of the best things about it. Where like again, you can hear like say influence of other vocalists. You absolutely can. He's clearly channeling like we've said, Tom Waits and all that sort of stuff. Like vocalists he likes. He's channeling that into metal, and because no one else is doing that, it just sounds totally unique. And he's not like he like I said, like there'll be bits where he will put on a voice to just make it to emphasize a line even more. And
yeah,
like, it is.
And I think sometimes that does. I when he goes, I took a walk last night in the valley of death. Like, I can see why that would hit like an immediately kind of off note for people, because it is kind of garish. It is kind of like, oh god, he's really going. There's no self-consciousness about it. Like, he really throws himself fully into these parts that arguably are a little silly. But the fact that he's pushing what he does, and he is diversifying the different things that he wants to do with his voice without just defaulting to like another stock template of like, this is what a metal singer can do on these kind of parts. And the thing I would say is, these bands who, from the world of kind of modern contemporary metal, who then change to something more accessible, a lot of them do have questions to be asked of them of losing their identity, Bands who exchange the things that were unique to them to do more of a thing that exists in the slipstream of what is popular. I understand if this direction is just not for you, but that is not what is happening with Parkway Drive. Categorically. Parkway Drive are only becoming more unique and more them the longer they've gone on. I'm not saying it's better or more cohesive an album or whatever, but Horizons is faceless compared to this album. Horizons is...
It's noise metalcore.
Yeah, 2009 metalcore. You might prefer the record.
Well,
That's cool.
A little bit of like Iron Maiden leads in there, but that's the kind of like sprinkling of identity.
This sounds like Parkway Drive and absolutely no one else.
Yeah. Again, I think that's totally it. Again, you've got bands you can kind of like, you can come and say, oh, I relate that bit to them a bit, but as a whole, it is the sound of Parkway Drive. I think they have really carved out their own niche sound across the course of 3 albums now, and I think it's really cool. And I agree, because I think, like, again, I'm with you. If you don't like the direction they've gone in at this point, that is fine. But it's when people are making kind of like redundant sort of assessments and comparisons to bands it's just nothing like, I'm just like, or saying they've kind of like got less interesting. I'm like, but no, because I think they are making more creatively interesting moves, and that's where it kind of sticks with me a little bit, where people were like, Five Finger Death Parkway and like that, and I'm just like, come on, like,
yeah. Again, I think most of those people are not our audience who are listening to it.
No, they're random people on Twitter and Facebook comment sections. I know, and I shouldn't let it get to me. But this is one where I just, because I really fucking like Parkway Drive.
Yeah,
it gets to me a bit on this.
So
one.
let's sum up this record within the nature of people who have reasonably been engaging with Parkway, and they may have sticking points, they may not, whatever. To me, this record is a bunch of bangers in a style that they are now extremely reliable in. And there are very much sort of familiar, well-worn, not as punchy as they were the first time around, parts in it. And then there are some worthy experiments that I think are encouraging in not letting that familiarity, really take over the record as a whole in the way that maybe you feel some of the more straight up kind of aggressive songs are. I haven't connected with this one as strongly as I did Reverence. Let's have Ire as its own kind of moment.
Yeah.
But I think it probably is because even though they are so good at the kind of heavy metal songs and can kind of shit them out, that doesn't mean they are as like one in a million as the best ones from the previous couple of records. So these like arena Parkway songs we'll have on this, they're all really, really good. For me, there's not any. I I'm picking up, I guess, that you disagree with that. For me, there are like not as many career best ones in those environments that will like they will hold their own live, like I said, no doubt, but they might not stick around in the way The Void, Prey in particular, Vice Grip have. None of the Crushed songs that they are writing are managing to supersede Crushed. I do think that this album has the most fully realised ballad type song of their career to date that completely makes it, worthwhile. And, if there are slightly diminishing returns on some part of the sounds, there are others that are like continuing to flower even more so. So it's a really good record. Everything seems to be in motion there in a kind of natural, organic, encouraging way.
Yeah, no, I will agree with you that I think the highs on Reverence, like there isn't a Prey on this album. I totally agree on that. I think what it is, for me, is Reverence had some experimental ideas introduced that felt a little unfinished, and I think this is the album where they, I think, come more fully formed. So I think that's why, as a whole, I do find this a more cohesive and engaging body of work record. I just think fair enough if you say it hasn't got The Void and Prey, like, because those are two of like the
I think what I'm saying is almost like the two halves of the record. This record is better at the experimental stuff.
Yeah.
But the core Parkway thing is not falling behind because they're still fucking great at it. It's just not kind of, again, as like, oh my god, this is the most exciting shit I've heard as maybe it has been. Overall, Darker Still, very, very good album. Very, very encouraging, like I said, still for being a Parkway fan going forward. Maybe, this evolution can continue to kind of change and surprise us in those ways. So, there you go. There's the verdict. Darker Still. Come round and headline a fucking festival, boys. Let's do it.